Hey friends, welcome back to Homestead on a Prayer. As you can see behind me, I've got this mostly empty garden bed. That's where my garlic was growing. I just harvested that a couple days ago, and now I've got this empty space, and I want to make the most use of it possible. So we have enough time in our growing season to get a second harvest of a few different types of plants before frost. So that's what I'm planning to put in this bed here. Now, I did have garlic growing here, as I mentioned. The other option would be to plant something for a fall harvest that can withstand a little bit of frost, like broccoli or kale or something like that. The reason that I'm choosing instead to plant a second summer harvest of a few different vegetables is because I'm hoping to use this bed again to replant my broccoli, which will happen probably in mid to late October. So I need something that I'm going to harvest before that point. If I planted broccoli or something like that, I would be leaving it in the ground longer. It would still be in the ground when it's time to plant the broccoli. So instead, we're going to plant some summer crops with a really quick maturity in this bed here. And then when we're done with that, I have another little section in the garden that we're going to plant too. So you can see this garden bed here. We've pulled out all the garlic. I have a couple little mini pumpkins that will hopefully be climbing this trellis once they really get going. And on this side of the bed, I have a sugar pie pumpkin that has climbed out of the bed. Those will be staying, but I'm going to fill in all this area in between. And then let's walk around over to this bed here. I had a lot of brassicas here. You can see that I still have a couple. It's starting to rain, so I think I'm actually going to have to pause this video. But the brassicas here, you can see brassicas in this bed have been chewed on pretty significantly. These are actually the best of the bunch. I think that the cabbage worms have moved on. They've finished that part of their life cycle and they won't be eating these anymore this year anyway. So I left the plants in the ground that I think might have a chance of survival and coming back. I pulled out all the ones that I'm pretty sure were just done, and I'm going to plant some new plants in this bed. So you can see here, even though these outer leaves are really chewed on, in the middle, these new leaves have not been munched on at all. So I think this plant is trying to make a comeback. And then over here, I've got a little Savoy cabbage, same thing. It's trying to make a little head in the middle. So I'm going to let that go and see if it's able to recover. And we're going to fill in all the other spaces here. So friends, it is starting to rain. Despite the weather forecast saying that it wasn't going to rain all day, as you can see, it is raining. Now, this is a light rain. I actually wouldn't mind working in this rain, but I don't want the extra seeds that I'm not going to be planting. I'm not going to be planting the entire packet, and I don't want to expose those seeds to this wetness because then they're not going to have a very long shelf life. I'm going to head inside. I'm going to meet you back out here when the rain stops, and we will get these spaces planted. So it's later the same day. It's afternoon now. It's, finally stopped raining. It's a little misty out here, but I think it'll be okay for planting seeds. Now, about a week, or maybe 2 weeks ago, I made a video talking about different options for seeds that you could still plant this time of year. So it's late July, and the season is in some ways, I guess, kind of winding down, but there are still plenty of things that we can plant. So today we're going to plant a few of those. I'm going to start on this trellis here. You can see I have my 2 pumpkin plants that survived, and they're a little bit small, but they look healthy, and I think those will end up growing up the trellis. But I do have this half of the trellis here that's empty. So what I'm going to start with is a couple silver slicer cucumbers. I do have lots of cucumbers planted in the garden, including some second planting cucumbers that are pretty small and haven't started yielding yet. So I don't know if I really need more cucumbers, but this will give me some late cucumbers. Well, hopefully, if everything goes well, will give me some late cucumbers, maybe all the way up till frost. And what I may end up doing if I have time, I may end up letting these cucumbers over here basically completely mature so that I can save seeds from them, because I don't have any other cucumber varieties growing in this area of the garden, meaning if I let these fully mature, there won't be any chance of cross-pollination, and then I'll be able to save seeds from these. So I had a really hard time starting cucumber seedlings this year. They continuously were eaten by slugs. Because of that, a lot of my cucumbers got off to a really late start and are a little bit behind. I have some that did not get eaten by slugs, and those are doing well. But some of them still need to catch up a little bit. So the most recent sowing of cucumbers that I planted were not bothered by slugs. So I'm thinking now that the slugs have more options, they kind of moved on from my seedlings. So I think I'll be okay to plant a few more cucumber seeds along this trellis, and we'll hope for the best. Cucumbers do really well being direct sown. So I'm just going to set these lightly into the soil, cover them with about 1/2 inch or so of soil. I planted a few extra seeds there. I may end up needing to thin them out if they all germinate, but I think that even though slugs haven't been an issue lately, just in case they decide to cause trouble, I planted a few extra. That will hopefully have a few extra seedlings, so we'll see what comes up. One thing I should mention about this bed here, as I did mention before, I recently harvested all of my garlic out of this bed. You can see that this bed is freshly amended with a couple inches of compost. Once I pulled the garlic out, I wanted to add some new compost to the bed to kind of refresh it a little bit and to replace any of the nutrients that were used up by the garlic. So, you know, probably about 2 inches or so of compost added to this bed, and that will give our new seeds that we're starting a great start. So you can see that these silver slicer seeds we planted here say 64 days to maturity. That's not long at all, so that's a good short season plant to plant now. I do also want to plant a couple more zucchinis over in this bed. These also have really short days to maturity. I think these are in the 50 to 60 day range, 45 to 55, even less than I was thinking, and this one's 58. So I'm hoping to, I think I'm going to put one of each of these in the middle of the bed to try to have one of each of these varieties for a second harvest. So when I plant zucchini, what I usually like to do is plant 2 or 3 seeds together, and then I'll usually thin it down to the 2 strongest plants. I give them a little bit of space from each other, but I kind of grow 2 plants usually together as one, because I find that as long as your soil is fertile enough, that maximizes the amount of flowers you're going to get at once and increases your chances of pollination. You know, squash are one of those plants where in order to get pollinated, you have to have male and female flowers blooming at the same time and then get visited by a pollinator unless you hand pollinate. And I find that sometimes they're a little bit finicky about what flowers bloom when. So I find that by growing 2 plants together, basically as one, you know, I do give them a little bit of space, but I grow them more closely than you normally would space them. And I find that that increases my chances of them getting pollinated. So I'm going to start in the back of the bed here with long white Palermo zucchini. So I'm going to, dropped a seedling in this bed. We'll use this one that flew out. So I'm going to plant 3 of these seeds. I'm just going to space them out a few inches apart from each other. And then if all 3 germinate, I will thin them to the strongest 2 plants. And I'm planting them right against this metal bar here, so right down the center of the bed. So on the other side of the bed in the front, I'm going to do the same thing with this Cocazelle zucchini. This is a really good, dependable zucchini variety. It's striped, like light green and dark green. It's really pretty, and I find that it's really reliable. So in the front, we're going to plant a few of these seeds. So I also do want to plant some bush beans. I'm going to start with these jade bush beans, and I don't think that that will be enough to fill this bed, so I'm going to fill in with these contender beans as well. Both of these bean varieties have really short maturity dates. I think the contender is 60 days and the jade is 55 days. Bush beans tend to yield more of their crop all at once, as opposed to pole beans that yield a little bit here and there throughout a longer season. So while I generally prefer pole beans, I think that they have better flavor overall. I like them. I like the way that they grow. I think that they're a little bit easier to harvest. Overall, I think I prefer pole beans. But that being said, there's definitely a place for bush beans too. And one of those places and times is when you need a quick harvest, like here where we're trying to get a quick harvest before frost. So my main goal with growing these bush beans isn't as much to extend the harvest, although you know that is a great thing, and I'll take that too. My main goal with these specific beans that we're planting today is to hopefully get enough extra beans that I can blanch and freeze them to hopefully have green beans over the winter. So that's why I'm planting so many bush beans in this area. And as I said, these should be ready in time. You know, they won't live through frost anyway, but they should be ready before frost for us to get a harvest. And then we'll have this space free to amend it again and to plant the fall garlic here. So I'm going to start with these jade bush beans here. When I'm planting these, I usually space them fairly closely together. I usually just give them maybe 4 inches or so of space. I don't really measure. So we're just going to plop these into the freshly rained on soil that I have here. So I got this front half of the bed planted with jade bush beans. I put this stick here to mark how far back in the bed we went. So I spaced them out about 4 inches in all directions, and those should germinate pretty quickly. This is really a great time to plant right now. You know, the soil is so warm, the air temperature is so warm, that these seeds are going to germinate really quickly, a lot more quickly than they do when I first plant my beans out in May, when the ground is still a little bit cooler. Additionally, I mentioned we did get some rain this morning, so this ground is nice and moist, and we are actually supposed to get rain over the next couple days. So that makes my job so much easier. Whenever I can plant seeds right before a couple days of rain, that's a great opportunity to take advantage of, because, you know, nature is going to do my watering for me. I won't have to worry about this soil drying out before these seeds get a chance to germinate. Now, at the end of a couple days, when the rain stops after a couple days, I'm going to come monitor this soil here, and if it seems like it's drying out, I will water it, because while seeds are germinating, they need a pretty steady supply of moisture to be able to absorb the moisture they need to germinate. And this time of year, you know, I mentioned the warmer air and soil temperatures as an advantage when it comes to germination time. Of course, that does have the opposite effect, or the negative effect, of making your soil dry out a little more quickly. So just something to be aware of when you're planting seeds in the summer. So on this side of the bed, the front half of the bed, I'm going to plant these contender bush beans. So we'll have some of each growing side by side. I'm just going to get this section planted with these beans. I'll meet you back here when we're done and show you what else we're planting today. So now that we've gotten all the bush beans planted, the next thing I want to plant, and what I'm going to plant in the back half of this bed, is lettuce. I actually was thinking about it, and I decided the bed with the brassicas over there, I think I'm actually going to wait a little bit to plant that out, because I think I want to plant some more cold hardy lettuces over there for fall and winter harvest. And over here I'm going to plant a little more heat tolerant lettuces that we're going to harvest early as baby greens. So I'm just going to sow these really thickly, just like I do in the spring. I'll show you how I plant these lettuces. These are generally lettuces. Some of these do tolerate cold as well, but for the most part I have focused a little bit on summer lettuces here, and we're going to try to see if we can get a second summer harvest before the fall harvest of lettuce. When I am planting lettuce that I mean to harvest for baby greens, I usually just like to make a little furrow in the soil. Just take my hand and make a furrow, maybe a 1/4 inch deep or so, and then I'll just sprinkle the seeds. Then I just sprinkle the seeds pretty thickly along this furrow. So when I'm planting in the summer, a lot of times I'll sprinkle my seeds even more thickly than I do in the spring, because lettuce sometimes finds it a little bit challenging to germinate in the hotter weather, so you want to make sure to sprinkle it extra thickly. So you can see how thick these seeds are, and then I'm just going to gently brush the soil back over them to cover them. Planting the lettuce seeds really thickly like that allows the lettuce to, grow really closely together, because I'm not planning to grow these to full-size heads and harvest them as individual heads. I'm planning to use the cut and come again harvest method, where you just harvest them as baby leaf lettuce, and you don't take the entire plant. You cut them and leave about an inch or so, and from that inch or so the plant can regrow and give you multiple harvests. So that is my favorite way to grow lettuce, and I like to sow my seeds, as you can see, really thickly for that reason. So I'm just going to finish sowing my lettuce varieties down this bed. I'll meet you back here when we're done. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today and planting these seeds. I'd love to hear what you're still planting in your garden. So I hope you're having a great day, and I can't wait to see you soon. I'll see you next time.